Good evening, everybody. Sorry, good afternoon.
皆さんこんにちは。
Today we're going to talk about Noah's Ark and the flood.
今日の最初のトピックはノアの箱舟、それからノアの洪水についてであります。
Now, many people ask, was there a global flood? Is there evidence for that?
ノアの洪水、世界規模のですね、世界中を覆ってしまった洪水であると言われていますけれども、そのような洪水が本当にあったのか、またそのような証拠があるのでしょうか。
Now, it's a well-known story. In many cultures, they have legends of the flood.
実は世界中さまざまな文化においてですね、地域において洪水伝説というものがありまして、
In fact, some people have estimated 270 legends around the world.
世界中で洪水について述べているですね、伝説が270以上も存在するそうです。
Here's a small selection of some of these stories.
これがその一部ですけれども、
In Hawaii, they have a legend of a man called Nu'u.
ハワイにおいてヌーという人がかつていたそうです。
The Toltec Indians talked about a world before the flood that lasted 1,716 years.
そしてメキシコのトルテック・インディアン、世界の、最初の世界は1716年続いたと、そして洪水が終わったという、記録があるんですね、伝説が。
That's quite remarkable because if you look at the chronology in the Bible, it gives a very similar number.
なぜなら聖書のですね、年代を調べていくと、この1716年に、近い年月が経ってから洪水が起こったことが分かっているんですね。
There's a Chinese legend of a man called Fuhi who became the father of the Chinese civilization.
中国文明においてはその父と言われる人がですね、フーヒという人物で、この人が中国文明の元となったと伝えられています。
And the story tells us that he and his wife, 3 sons and 3 daughters, were the only people left alive to repopulate the world.
そして洪水の後にですね、このフーヒと3人の息子だけが洪水で生き残って、彼らからさらに世界中にですね、人口が増えていったと言われているわけです。
So according to this story, there were only 8 people.
ですからこの中国における洪水伝説でもですね、洪水で生き残ったのは8人であったと言われているわけです。
And that's interesting because the Chinese word for boat is made up of a vessel for 8 people.
船という漢字、誰もがご存知だと思いますけれども、船辺に8つの口、言い換えるならば、8人の人間という字からなっているわけですね。
And that sounds exactly like the Bible story.
聖書の物語とぴったり当てはまるのです。
Now people ask, if there was a global flood, where did all the water come from?
では世界中を水が覆うほどのですね、洪水が実際にあったとしたら、その水は一体どこから来たのでしょうか。
They say it couldn't possibly rain long enough to flood the whole world. All right, you couldn't flood the whole world just purely from rain falling down.
どんなに雨が降ってもですね、世界中を覆うほどの雨量にはなりません。
But it pays to look carefully at what the Bible says.
しかし聖書の記述を注意深く見てみますと、
The Bible says the fountains of the great deep were broken up.
黄色い字で書かれているところですけれども、大いなる淵の源がことごとく破れたという表現になっているんですね。
So according to this, much of the flood water came from underground.
これによると、この世界中を覆った水のですね、大半がですね、 地下から湧いて出てきた、あるいは噴出してきたということがわかるわけです。
Let me share one of the theories that helps make sense of the flood or helps explain the possibility of a flood.
この洪水があった可能性をですね、説明する、ことをしてみたいと思うんですけれども、
The world before the flood was quite different to our world today.
洪水前の世界は今日の私たちの世界とはだいぶ違っておりました。
There were not the vast, deep oceans that we have today.
今日のようにですね、海はそれほど広くはなかったんです、陸と比べて。
And the theory is the atmosphere, the air was denser and had more oxygen.
そしてこれもですね、あくまで説ですけれども、仮説ですけれども、当時の洪水前の世界は今よりもですね、空気中の酸素の量が割合がですね、多かったと言われています。
And we'll share more of that shortly.
もう少し後でこのことも説明しますけれども、
Now this is how one theory proposes the world was before the flood.
あくまで洪水前の世界はこのようなものであったのではないかという説の一つですけれども、
You had small seas like large lakes,
大きな、湖のようなですね、比較的陸地と比べれば小さな海が存在していたのではないかと。
and there was vast quantities like a layer of water under the earth, vast amounts of water deep
そ
in
し
the
て
earth.
この地下のですね、地層の下の方にですね、大量の水が眠っていたのではないかと思われるわけです。
And then at some stage, the crust of the earth cracked and this water came bursting
そ
out.
してある時点でですね、地面に裂け目ができて、その地下水がですね、湧き上がってきたと考えられるわけです。
And this is the fountains of the great deep the Bible speaks of.
大いなる淵がですね、破れたような状態であります。
And the water jetted high in the air, and this continued for 40 days.
そして水がですね、大量にあちらこちらで地面から噴出してきたと考えられます。そしてそのような状態が40日間続いたわけですね。
Now there's some good evidence that this is actually what happened.
そしてこれが実際に起こったということを、裏付ける証拠も見つかっているんです。
For example, the theory says that as the crack grew and extended in width,
例えばですね、この地面のひびがですね、どんどん広がっていくと、その幅が大きくなっていくわけですね。
the underlying rock pushed up.
それに伴ってこの地面のですね、岩の部分が盛り上がってきたと考えられます。
And that caused the crust of the earth, the plates, to slide away.
そしてこの、地殻変動が起こってですね、地下の部分がだいぶ移動するわけです。
And that has formed what we can still see on Earth today called the Mid-Atlantic Oceanic Ridge.
それの顕著な例がですね、大西洋の真ん中に、海底にですね、このような縦長の山脈が形成されているわけです。
And this ridge of mountains goes all around the world.
そしてこのようなですね、海底山脈というのは実は地球上にですね、広がっています。見られます。
And as the plates on top, the crust was sliding away, it met resistance and compressed and buckled.
そして地殻変動が起こると、そのなんて言いますか、抵抗によって大きな圧力が加わるわけですね。
And we see evidence of that today in these sort of mountains here, where the land was compressed and distorted and buckled together.
そして、地面がですね、大いに、圧力が加えられて、その結果変形してですね、大きな山が形成されたと考えられます。
And the flood left huge layers of flood deposits, many, many layers.
そしてその洪水の結果ですね、このような大きな層が、地層がですね、形成されました。
Scientists looking at this today put dates on them, like 600 million years ago,
そして
350
その
million
地層
years.
を見てですね、科学者たちは、地質学者たちは何年前のものであると年代をですね、推測してつけるわけです。600万年前とか360万年前、310万年前とか。
And they believe these built up over very long periods of time.
そして長い何百万年もの年月を経て、このような地層が出来上がっていったと推測されているわけです。
But I believe a flood is a much better explanation for this.
しかし、そのような仮説よりもですね、洪水によって形成されたと考える方がもっとより理にかなっているんです。
In fact, in many places around the world, we find trees that were buried extending through many of these layers.
世界中のあちらこちらでこのような何百年万年もかけて、積み重なっていったはずの地層をですね、一本の木の化石化した木がですね、このように縦に貫いている様子がですね、あちらこちらで見られるんです。
It's obvious that these layers did not build up over millions of years.
ですからこのことからもですね、これらの地層が何百万年もかけてこのように形成されていったとは、この状態からは考えられないわけです。
These trees were obviously buried very rapidly.
このように化石化した木はですね、比較的短時間で埋没したということが科学的に説明されています。
This speaks of a catastrophe, not slow, gradual processes.
ですから何百万年もかけて長い年月を経て形成されたのではなくて、比較的短期間のですね、大災害によってこのような状態になったと考える方がより理にかなっているんです。
The coal fields that we find is also evidence of the flood.
世界中のあちらこちらに埋もれている石炭もですね、この洪水の記録を裏付けている一つであります。
Coal is made up of buried forests and trees.
石炭というのは、森林がですね、埋没して時を経てですね、出来上がったものであります。
Again, the most logical explanation for these vast coal fields is rapid burial in the flood.
世界中のあちらこちらで広大なですね、森林が埋没してしまった、地面の中に埋もれてしまったという事実があるならば、これがですね、洪水によってそのようになったと考える方が無難なわけです。
Now, people ask about dinosaurs in the flood. What's the connection between dinosaurs and Noah's flood?
ある人たちはその恐竜とノアの洪水の関係、どのように説明できるんですかと問いかける人たちがいます。
Scientists say dinosaurs disappeared 65 million years ago.
一般的に科学者たちはですね、恐竜は6500万年前に絶滅したと言われています。
National Geographic says no human being has ever seen a live dinosaur.
そしてナショナルジオグラフィックの記事ではですね、実際に恐竜を見た人間は一人もいないと書かれています。
But you know, all around the world there's interesting evidence that people did see live dinosaurs.
しかし世界中のあちらこちらに人間が実際にですね、生きている恐竜を見たことがあるという記録、あるいは証拠がですね、見つかっているんです。
Let me share some of these interesting archaeological findings.
これらの興味深い考古学的ですね、発見にいくつか紹介したいと思いますが、
For example, here's a picture carved in the Grand Canyon in the United States.
これはアメリカのグランドキャニオンに描かれている壁にですね、描かれている写真ですけれども、
Some have suggested this could be a picture of this kind of dinosaur here.
このような恐竜の絵ではないかと考えられるわけです。
Here's another interesting dinosaur picture here.
ここにも恐竜の絵が実は描かれているんですけれども、首の長い恐竜ですね。
Sorry. Over in Australia,
オーストラリアにおいては、
some of the Aboriginal artwork depicts animals which you don't see in Australia today.
アボリジニ原住民がですね、過去に古代に昔描いたですね、動物の絵が描かれているんですけれども、オーストラリアには現在生存しない動物なんです。
Here's an interesting animal with 4 legs and a very long neck.
足が4本あって長い首があります。
Another tribe in North Queensland have this as one of their paintings.
北クイーンズランドの古代民族が描いたのがこのような絵なんですけれども、
It looks like this beast has eaten one of their friends.
この獣がですね、彼らの友人の一人を食べてしまったような絵であります。
And the rest of the tribe is trying to kill it.
そしてこの人間たちがですね、この動物を獣をですね、殺そうと必死になっている様子が描かれています。
And they have legends of monsters like this relatively recently.
Pardon me?
Sorry. That they have tribal legends of big beasts like this in the time past, previous times.
Okay.
Sorry.
過去に、このようなですね、この民族が存在したときにですね、このような動物が、実際に生存したということが考えられるわけです。
This is a rock painting from Canada.
岩に描かれたカナダで見つかった絵ですけれども、
And again, this looks more like a dinosaur than anything else.
これもですね、恐竜に似ている絵ですね。
There's some other interesting discoveries being made in South America at a place called Ica.
南アメリカのイカというところでですね、他にも興味深い証拠が見つかっています。
People are finding rocks and stones that have carvings on them.
この広い場所にですね、岩に彫刻が施されているのが発見されました。
And some of these carvings look very interesting.
この彫刻を見てみると非常に興味深い箇所がありまして、
Some of these carvings depict what we would call dinosaurs.
やはり私たちが恐竜としか認識できない生き物がですね、描かれているんです。
For example, can you see this one
こ
here?
の生き物をご覧になれますでしょうか。
In English, we'd call this a triceratops. I don't know what
日本語だとこれトリケラトプスという恐竜だそうですけれども、恐竜に見えますよね。
And how about this one? This looks like a Tyrannosaurus Rex attacking a human.
これはあたかもティラノサウルスという恐竜が人間を襲っているような絵であります。
And it looks like the humans fought back and fought the dinosaurs.
人間とですね、恐竜がなんか戦っているような絵であります。
Here you can see a person with an axe attacking this large dinosaur creature here.
そしてこの絵はですね、人間が斧を持って、恐竜のような大きな獣を攻撃している、あるいは襲っている様子が描かれています。
Here is, we'll show you a larger picture. Here you can see this person
ここの上の人がですね、この人が
has cut the head off this dinosaur.
恐竜の首をちょん切っているような絵ですよね。
Here's another, you can just see it, a Tyrannosaurus Rex. There's the head.
ティラノサウルスのような恐竜がご覧になれますでしょうか。
Here's another example. There's many of these stones. People have found thousands.
南米で見つかった石にですね、このような絵がたくさん描かれていたんです。
This one looks like a Tyrannosaurus
この恐竜もティラノサウルスのように見えますけれども、
fighting another dinosaur.
別の恐竜と喧嘩しています。
And down here looks like a Triceratops.
この恐竜はトリケラトプスに見えますね。
Here's another one, another
こ
Triceratops.
れもトリケラトプスのような恐竜に見えます。
This one's interesting. This person here appears to be riding on this dinosaur.
この絵はですね、恐竜に人間が乗っているように描かれています。
Perhaps they had them as pets.
もしかしたらペットとして飼っていたのでしょうか。
And here it's a bit hard to see, but this is a person
これちょっと見にくいですけども、ここに人間の顔がありまして、
holding the head of a dinosaur here.
恐竜の頭の部分をですね、抱えている様子であります。
There's also other evidences as well.
他にもいくつもですね、証拠は見つかっているんですけれども、
For example, on the cloth that some of the South American mummies were wrapped up,
南米で見つかったですね、ミイラのこの衣服を見てみると、
again, it showed dinosaur patterns.
恐竜の模様が描かれているんです。
This is the design here.
そのデザインもですね、恐竜を表しているかのようですね。
And there's other examples of this. Oh, sorry. Here. More examples of dinosaur patterns on their fabric.
恐竜の模様が描かれているように見えます。
Up in Central America,
中央アメリカに行きますと、
and this location here, somebody found a whole lot of dinosaur models buried in a hole.
穴の中に埋もれたこのような恐竜のですね、模型が見つかったんです。
And they were made of jade and obsidian, and they were buried probably to keep them from the Spanish conquistadors taking them.
もしかしたらこのスペイン人がですね、侵略してきたときに彼らに奪われないように、埋めてですね、隠したということが考えられます。
And there's many models, and they're dinosaurs.
恐竜のですね、このような模型のようなものが、たくさん見つかっているんです。
Now, here's an interesting artifact that was found in the United States in Arizona.
これはアメリカアリゾナ州で発見された、これも興味深い遺物なんですけれども、
Here it is here. This is a sword.
これは剣ですね。
And depicted on the sword is a large dinosaur.
そしてこの剣にもですね、大きな恐竜が実は描かれているんです。
You can see here's the
このような
illustration.
形で恐竜が描かれています。
So it appears that people, humans, have interacted with dinosaurs.
かつて古代人たちがですね、恐竜と何らかの関わりを持って生活していたということがですね、ここから見て取れるわけです。
Now the Bible says, talking about the days of Noah,
聖書にですね、ノアの時代の、人々の様子について描いているところがありまして、
that there were giants.
その頃巨人、大きな民族、人間がいたということが記されています。
And some of the fossils that are found illustrate that yes, everything was big back in the days of
人
Noah.
間だけでなくてノアの時代、洪水前の時代は全てのものが大きかった。今よりもですね、ずっとサイズが大きかったということが、分かっているんです。
For example, fossilized dragonflies have been found
例えばこれはトンボ、化石化したトンボが見つかっているんですけれども、
with a wingspan of 72
羽を
centimeters.
広げた長さが実に72センチもあるんです。
This is a model being made to illustrate how big it was in real life.
その化石化したトンボをですね、復元したモデルですけれども、これぐらいの大きさになります。
Could you imagine having one of these for a pet?
こんなのがですね、飛び回っていたらどうでしょうか。
Now, dragonflies cannot grow this large today.
しかし、今日の世界の環境ではですね、トンボがこれほど大きくなることは不可能です。
Because conditions have changed.
状況が変わってきたからですね。
And how do we know that?
どうしてそれがわかるんでしょ
う Let me share something about what's been discovered in amber, which is fossilized tree resin. Tree resin? Tree sap?
OK、
juice from it.
これは最近見つかった樹液、固まっ、Is it fossilized?
No, sorry, it's tree sap, which is trapped insects like, yeah, you know.
樹液の中に、昆虫がですね、入り込んでしまって死んだ状態ですよね、これは。
These were insects that were trapped according to conventional time millions of years ago.
そして科学者たちはですね、これは何百万年も前に樹液の中に入って死んでしまった、昆虫だと言っているわけですけれども、
I'll put to you, it's more likely at the time of Noah's flood if we use Bible chronology.
しかし聖書が正しいとするならば、これは、ノアの時代あるいは洪水前の時代のものだと考えることが、より適切なわけです。
What's interesting is inside the amber,
興味深いのはこの樹液の中を調べてみると、
there were also air bubbles that were trapped.
その中、樹液の中にですね、空気の泡が存在しました。
And scientists have analyzed the air inside these air bubbles.
その空気の泡ですね、気泡を科学者が分析してみますと、
And of the many, many samples they've done,
そしてこういった標本をですね、いくつも取り出して繰り返し分析してみました。
the average oxygen content is 30%.
そしたらこの気泡のですね、酸素の割合がですね 30% もあることが分かったんです。平均してですね。
In some examples, it was actually 35%.
ある標本は 35% も酸素が含まれていたそうです。
Now, the air that we have today is only about 20% oxygen.
今日私たちが吸っている空気の酸素の割合は、だいたい 20% ぐらいであります。
Scientists have also experimented with fruit flies. Do you know fruit flies? Little tiny insect.
Okay, fruit flies.
Yeah. Very small little.
And they, scientists.
Oh, yes. Scientists have experimented with fruit flies.
Okay. ショウジョウバエですかね。果物とかにつく小さなハエを科学者たちがですね、実験を行ったそうです。
They've raised multiple generations of fruit flies in a high oxygen content like this.
そして何世代かにわたってショウジョウバエを酸素の多い場所でですね、酸素 30% ぐらいのところで環境で育てたそうです。
And they found that they began increasing in size with each generation.
そしたら、世代から世代で交代していくに従ってどんどんですね、体が大きくなっていったそうです。
So it appears having high oxygen promotes big growth.
ですから酸素量が多い環境だと生き物はですね、大きくなる、より大きくなるということが考えられます。
Now here's some more interesting discoveries regarding dinosaurs.
これも恐竜に関する興味深い発見ですけれども、
These are dinosaur tracks here.
これら恐竜の足跡であります。
Do you know it's been discovered that some of these dinosaur tracks have human tracks crossing them?
しかしこういった恐竜の足跡のそばにですね、実はあちらこちらで人間の足跡も見つかっているのを皆さんご存知ですか？
And here's an example of one here. You can see a human footprint here.
ここにあるのが、これ恐竜の横にあるのが恐竜の大きい足跡で、そのすぐそばにですね、人間の足跡が見つかっています。
In the same area as this dinosaur footprint here.
大きな恐竜の足跡のすぐそばですね。
Again, this is telling us that dinosaurs and humans lived together.
これは同じ時代に同じ時期に人間と恐竜が生存していたということを示しています。
Now, speaking of giants, I'd like to share about examples of giant humans that have been found.
かつて古代にですね、巨人が生存していたことについての、例をお見せしたいんですけれども、
In 1946, Life magazine published an interesting article.
1946年に発行されたライフ誌にですね、興味深い記事が載っておりました。
This here is a normal human jaw.
右側が現代人の下顎の写真であります。
But on the left is a jaw from someone they called Meganthropus.
左側がですね、メガントロプスという巨人、人間ですよ。人間の下顎であります。
And his teeth were huge.
その同じメガントロプスの人のですね、歯も実に大きいものです。
This is a normal
これが現代人の歯ですね、歯ですけれども、
human tooth, like what we all have.
私たちも誰もが持っている普通のサイズの歯です。
This is a tooth from someone they call Gigantopithecus.
これもですね、巨人の中から見つかった歯であります。
That's a human tooth, but look at the size difference.
あくまで人間の歯なんですけれども、このサイズを比べてみてもどれほど大きいか分かりますよね。
Oh, there we go. If that's worth reading. This is a jawbone that was found in eastern Turkey, where we're going to talk about shortly.
今もうしばらくしてからトルコ東部ので発見されたものについてお話ししますけれども、そこ同じ場所で大体同じ場所で見つかったこれは人間の、顎の骨であります。
This jaw on the left here is from a female.
こちらの左側の顎骨はですね、実は女性のものなんですけれども、
But it's 6.5 inches across.
幅が 16.5 センチもあります。
Now, if you measure your jawbone, like if I measure mine, it's about, say, that big.
だいたい自分のですね、顎骨をこうやって幅を見てみてください。
But
だいたい
this,
どんなに大きくても10センチぐらいだと思います。
but that jaw is this big.
しかしこの 16.5 センチになるとこれぐらいの大きさであるわけですね。
So this belonged to a very, very big lady.
しかもこの人はかなり大きい女性であったということがわかるわけです。
Other examples of giant human bones have been found also.
他にも巨人のですね、巨人が見つかっている証拠がいくつも出てきているんですけれども、
For example, this thumb bone here.
これは親指の骨であります。
Now that bone is this one, which is that thumb bone there.
この部分、親指のこの部分ですね。
But it's huge.
先ほどの親指の骨、どれほど大きいものかご覧になれますでしょうか。
I've held this bone and it was like that big compared
私
to
も
me.
これ自分の手で持ってみましたらこれぐらいの大きさでした。
So whoever's hand this came from was a very big person.
ですからこの親指の持ち主はですね、やはり体も相当大きかったことでしょう。
Some examples of giant leg bones have been found also.
他にもですね、足の骨、大腿骨の骨が見つかっているんですけれども、巨人のものですね。
This was found by an Egyptian road crew. This is a model of it.
エジプトで見つかった骨ですけれども、
And you can see the size the person must have been.
この現代人と比べてどれほど大きいものであったかご覧になれるでしょ
う。Now, if there was a flood, where then is Noah's ark?
では、ノアの洪水が本当にあったものだとしたら、ノアの箱舟はどこにあるのでしょうか。
That's what we'd like to talk about now.
これから本題に入るわけですけれども、
First of all, let's just quickly review the story in the Bible that led up to the worldwide flood.
この洪水に、世界規模の洪水に至ったですね、この歴史をですね、世界の様子を聖書から手短に見てみましょう。
Why did God send a global flood?
なぜ神様は世界を覆うほどのですね、洪水を起こされたのでしょうか。
The Bible tells us that God intervened because the world had become very wicked.
聖書によると、世界中の人間があまりにも悪く堕落してしまったために、悪徳がはびこったために、神様がですね、その悪を止めようとなさったということが書かれています。
It says in the Bible that every imagination of man's heart was only evil continually.
聖書には当時の人々の心に思いはかることがいつも悪いことばかりであったと書かれています。
And the world was filled with violence.
そして暴虐が地に満ちたと書かれています。
And God said, I will not always strive with man. And God gave man 120 years to make a decision.
そして神様はですね、120年の猶予期間を定められて、その間にですね、誰にでも選ぶ、その猶予期間を与えたわけです。
But you know, there was a faithful man. His name was Noah.
しかし、その中にあって、そのような世界にあって、神様に忠実なノアという人物がいました。
And God instructed Noah to build a big ship.
神様はノアに、箱舟を作るように、船を作るようにと命じられました。
And God waited in the days while the ark was being prepared.
そして聖書にはですね、この箱舟が建造されている間、神様は待っておられたと書かれています。
Now Noah was doing this by faith. He had never seen rain before.
当時の世界は一度も雨が降ったことがなかったんですけれども、その雨が降るということを見越してですね、ノアは信仰によってこのような箱舟を建てたと聖書に書かれています。
And the ark was designed to take examples of all the different kinds of animals on board.
そして箱舟ができてからですね、あらゆる種類の動物が選ばれて入ってきました。
Now, just to clarify something here, some people ask, how could you possibly get every different species of animal we see today on one boat?
今日ですね、世界中に見られるすべての、種類の生き物、生物がですね、箱舟に入ったということが可能なのかと疑問をぶつける人たちがいます。
But even scientists will tell you that, for example, all the different kinds of dogs we see today all have a common ancestor.
しかし、例えばですね、今日では犬の種類がたくさんありますけれども、もともとは一種類だったということがですね、科学的に分かっています。
If there was just one pair of, shall we say, generic dogs on the ark, that would explain how Noah only had to take one kind on the ark of dogs, and all the different dogs we see today descended from that one pair.
例えば犬科の動物はその原種がいて、その原種のオスとメスが1匹ずつ箱舟に入ったと考えるならば、他の動物においてもそのことが言えるわけですね。
The potential for variety was built into the genetics, into the DNA.
これで DNA。
Yeah, sorry. Is that
そしてその DNA によってですね、その 動物の種類の中でですね、どんどん種類が分かれていくことが可能なわけです。
Thanks. Anyway, God said, "Come in, I've seen you righteous." And Noah was inviting people to come on board the ark.
箱舟が完成した後にノアは当時の人々に向かって一緒に箱舟に入りましょうと、招待をしました。
But when Noah got on and the door closed, that was it. You were either in the boat or out of the boat.
しかし、招待に応じる人たちはいなくて、ノアとですね、その家族が入った後、箱舟の扉は閉ざされてしまいました。その後でですね、考えを変えてももう手遅れだったわけです。
Then it says, after 7 days, all the fountains of the great deep were opened up. This is when the water came exploding out of the earth.
箱舟の扉が閉じてから7日の後に、大いなる淵の源がことごとく破れ、天の窓が開けたとあります。
And then those people that were outside must have wished they were on the inside.
おそらく箱舟に乗らなかった人たちの多くが洪水がやってきたときに船に入っておけばよかったと後悔したことでしょ
う。The Bible says, only Noah and those who were with him survived.
そしてただノアと彼と共に箱舟に入った者だけが生き残ったと聖書に書かれているんです。
And after more than 1 year on the ark, it finally landed, and after a while they could leave and begin life anew.
洪水が起こってから1年後にですね、ようやく水が引いて箱舟を人間とその中に入った動物たちも共にですね、そこから出てくることができたわけです。
Now people ask, is that story we find in the Bible, is it fact or fiction? Is it true or false?
そして多くの人たちがこのお話は実話なのだろうか、それとも作り話なのだろうかと問うています。
I'd like to share with you, I believe it is true, and would like to share where we think the ark is today.
私はこれが真実の物語だと信じておりますけれども、それを裏付けるですね、お話をしていきたいと思います。
Now there are many claims made about Noah's ark.
ノアの箱舟についてはさまざまな主張が出回っています。
Many people have claimed to have found it.
ノアの箱舟を見つけましたと主張する人たちは実は少なからずいるんですね。
And yet a lot of these claims are contradictory with each other.
ところが、多くのそういった証言、主張がですね、矛盾したものなんです。
So unfortunately, there's been a lot of error or lies on this subject.
そしてこのことに関して発見されたと言われていることにお話がですね、ほとんどが、作り話、捏造された嘘だということがですね、分かっています。
So I'd like to share a few of these claims, and you decide which you think is the best option.
いくつかの箱舟発見にまつわるですね、主張を皆さんに紹介しますので、どれがより信憑性があるかということは皆さんが判断していただきたいと思うわけです。
Let's start with what the Bible says about where it landed.
聖書には箱舟がですね、降り立った場所が記されていまして、
The Bible says the ark rested upon the mountains of Ararat.
そこはアララテの山ではなくて、英語では mountains とありますから、正しい訳はアララテの山々にとどまったと書かれているんです。
The Hebrew translated to mountains here is plural.
そしてこの聖書の言語のですね、ヘブル語においてもこの山という部分は複数であることがわかるんです。
And the word translated Ararat is from the Hebrew word uratu.
そしてこのアララテという言葉はですね、名前はヘブル語を見るとウラトゥという言葉になっています。
Urartu was an ancient kingdom that covered this area here.
実はウラルトゥという古代王国がですね、このトルコのこの辺りをですね、治めていたことが歴史的に分かっていまして、
So what the Bible was saying is the ark came to rest on one of the mountains within this kingdom area here.
聖書の記述はですね、実はこのウラルトゥという国の中のどこかの山に降り立ったということを言っているわけです。
Now some have assumed or thought that must mean Mount Ararat.
しかし現代、多くの人たちが箱舟はこのアララテ山として今日知られている山の上どこかにですね、とどまってそこにあると考えられているんです。
And many people claim to have seen it on this mountain.
そしてこの山にですね、実際に箱舟を見たと、発見したと証言している人は少なからずいるんです。
It's a very impressive mountain, very big.
とても美しい大きな5000メートル級の山であります。
But it's a volcano.
しかしこれは火山性の山なんですね。
And geologists will tell you that it's a relatively recent volcano. It's a young
そし
volcano.
て専門のですね、地質学者たちはこの火山性の山はですね、比較的最近できたものであると証言しています。
And it has erupted violently in the past.
過去において大きな大噴火を起こしていまして、
In fact, there was an eruption, we understand, in 1848.
例えば1848年に大噴火を起こした記録があるんです。
And this hole here, this empty side, called the Ahura Gorge, is where it exploded out.
そしてこの1848年の時に噴火した時はこの辺りから大噴火が起こったそうです。今ではここがくぼみになっているわけですね。
Now, some people claim to have seen Noah's Ark inside this crater.
にもかかわらず、ちょうどこのクレーターのですね、このそばでノアの箱舟を発見したと証言している人がいるんです。
But I'm sure you can understand that is not very logical.
しかしこれは理にかなっていないということは皆さんでも分かりますよね。
For example, here's Mount St. Helens in the United States, which erupted in 1980.
アメリカ合衆国で1980年に大噴火した、これはセントヘレンズ山の写真ですけれども、
That used to have a nice peak on it like Mount Fuji.
かつてはですね、富士山のように美しい形をした山でした。
And then it exploded and the top was blown off.
1980年に大噴火を起こして頂上付近がですね、吹き飛んでしまったんです。
Would there be any sense in looking for something intact in the crater after that explosion?
その噴火の後でこの辺りにですね、何か昔のものがそのままの状態で発見されることが期待できるでしょうか。
Obviously not, because everything on that Mount St. Helens was destroyed.
もう頂上までですね、吹き飛ばすほどの大噴火があったわけですから、そのようなものが見つかるはずはないわけですね。
Likewise, it's pointless looking in the Ahura Gorge for anything.
ですから誰かがですね、この辺にノアの箱舟が見つかったぞと言ったとしてもですね、大噴火したすぐそばで起こったとは到底考えられないわけです。
Oh, there we go. Yet this man here claims to have seen Noah's Ark in that crater.
そしてこの人がですね、そのクレーターのそばでノアの箱舟を見つけたと証言した人物なんですけれども、
In 1958, he said,
1958年に
but then in
この
1960s,
辺りで見つけた、その先ほどの大噴火したところがこの辺りですけれども、ちょうどこの辺りで見つけたと彼は証言しました。
then in 1967, he said it was here.
それから1967年にその、証言を翻してですね、いや、やっぱりここにあったと言い始めたんです。
And then the next year, he said it was over here.
そしてさらに次の年になって、いや、やっぱりここだったと、また証言を変えました。
Another site on this mountain which people suggest may be Noah's Ark.
他にもですね、多くの人がここにノアの箱舟があるのではないかと考えている場所がありまして、
is this here. And in summertime, when the ice melts back, you can see this shape here.
ちょうどこの辺り、夏に氷がですね、少なくなった時に上から見るとこのような形を呈します。
The problem is this is twice as long as what the Bible says Noah's Ark should be.
しかし問題がありまして、いくつか、まずこの長さですね。聖書にノアの箱舟がどれだけの寸法だったと書かれているその記述よりも2倍も長いんです。
And geologists say this is just a natural feature.
しかも地質学者はこの形を写真を見てですね、いやこれは自然にできたものに過ぎないと言っています。
As you'll see on the video, we'll show shortly.
今からもうしばらくしてお見せするビデオにもですね、ここが出てきますけれども、
Perhaps the most spectacular claim is that made recently by a group from Hong Kong.
そして本当に最近ですね、ごく最近、香港からのチームの人たちがノアの箱舟を発見したと発表したんですけれども、
They held a press conference.
彼らは記者会見まで開きました。
And they said, ancient wood structure discovered on Mount Ararat.
アララテ山で古代の木の構造物が発見されたとここに書かれています。
And they claimed they had discovered Noah's Ark on Mount Ararat.
そしてこのアララテ山でまさしく本物のノアの箱舟を見つけたんだと彼らは、主張したわけですね。
They showed pictures of their expedition.
彼らが、その調査をしている様子を描いた写真ですけれども、
And pictures inside what they said was Noah's Ark on Mount Ararat.
これはアララテ山で発見したノアの箱舟の内部の写真であるとまで言われています。
Here's one of their pictures.
これもその内部の写真だというわけですけれども、
You'll see the nice, fresh new straw here.
ここに比較的なんか新しいような藁がありますよね。
Now tell me, do you think if straw was left on a mountain for 4,000 years,
4000年もですね、藁がこのような状態で残っているとは考えられるでしょうか。
where there's freezing and thawing action happening,
しかも本当に5000メートル級の山ですから、とても、寒さの厳しい場所なんですね。そのような環境で藁が4000年もこのような状態で生き延びるということはあり得るでしょうか。
realistically, do you think it would still look like this?
現実的に考えたらこのような状態で藁がですね4000年も残っているっていうのはどうも疑わしいわけですね。
I'd say this is a little bit suspicious.
本当に怪しいと思われるわけです。
They showed other pictures like this which had spider webs.
他にも箱舟内部の写真が、紹介されたんですけれども、この写真を見るとこの辺りにですねクモの巣があるんです。
This was their website.
そしてまあ
Oops, sorry.
You're not going to talk about spider web.
Okay, yes, spiders do not live high on Mount Ararat where there's ice and snow.
そしてアララテ山のようなですね5000メートル級の山にクモは一匹も生息していないんです。
Now on their website they mention Randall Price here.
彼らのこのウェブサイトにですねランドプライスというここにまたさらなるウェブサイトが紹介されているんですが、
Now Randall Price was working with these people from Hong Kong.
この香港からのチームとこのランドル・プライスという人は協力して、調査をしたらしいんですけれども、
And he decided to stop working with this group from Hong
し
Kong.
かし一緒に調査をしている途中でですね彼はそこからその調査をですねやめてしまいました。
And he said, I knew this was coming. He could see this was going to happen.
このことが来ることを私は知っていた。
And he decided they were not being honest.
そして彼が説明するには、この調査団の人たちは、誠実な正直な人たちではないと結論付けたんです。
Some of those pictures you just saw came from a building near the Black Sea.
箱舟内部の写真とかですね、さまざまないろんな写真が発表されたんですけれども、実は、黒海という場所の近くで撮影されたものだということが分かったんです。
Now, Randall Price here was also working with a man called Don Patton, and they were working together with some of these Chinese people.
その、ランド・プライスという人はDon Pattonという人と、それからこの中国人のですね、チームの人たちと一緒に調査をしていたわけですけれども、
And Don Patton found a site on Ararat where the Turkish man who worked with the Chinese had taken some wood up to make a little, what do you call it, a fake room of an ark.
そしてこのドン・パタンという人はですね、中国人に頼まれたトルコの現地人がですね、ある木造の何かをですね、アララテ山のどこかに置いて、あたかもこれが箱舟かのようにですね、あるいそのなんて言いますか、でっち上げている様子を見たと証言したんです。
Because this picture here was actually taken on Mount Ararat.
この写真は実際にアララテ山で撮られたものなんですけれども、
But Don Patton found where it was taken.
そしてそれがどこで撮影されたかということはドン・パタンさんも、実際に見たそうです。
And some of the wood was still there in the water when the ice had melted.
そして氷が溶けて水になったところにですね、その彼らが置いた木がですね、今でも残っていまして、
And he retrieved some of the wood from that photograph.
木を回収して持ってきたその写真ですけれども、
And when it was cut open,
これを、真っ二つに調べてみますと、
you could see it was fresh wood that had been burnt on the outside to make it look old.
中はですね、実に生木だったそうです。そしてそれ外をですね、古く見せるために焦がしていたということが分かりました。
So very sadly, this is a deception.
ですから世界的にですね、ノアの箱舟が中国人らによって発見されたということを発表されて、世論を賑わしたことがあったんですけれども、このお話もですね、捏造によるものだったと言わざるを得ません。
And other ministries are now saying exactly the same thing, that this is a hoax.
他にも学者でですね、これはでっち上げに過ぎないという結論を出しています。
So this is very sad, but if the Bible is true, Noah's Ark must be somewhere. Where is it?
こういったいろんな嘘をつく人たちが出てくる、次から次へと出てくるわけですけれども、にもかかわらず聖書に書かれていることは事実であったはずなのです。
And I'll show you where I believe it is today.
そして実際にノアの箱舟がどこに見つかったかということを皆さんに今から説明していきます。
This is Mount Ararat here.
アララテ山を真上から見た写真ですね。これが頂上付近です。
And 30 kilometers from the peak is a site that is worth investigating.
そしてそのアララテ山からですね、30キロほど行ったところに実に興味深い場所が見つかっています。
It was recognized by aerial photographs.
その場所がですね、これ航空写真でまず最初に発見されたんですけれども、
And then it was publicized in Life magazine.
1959年に写真が撮られまして、その写真がですね、1960年のライフ誌で紹介されました。
And they asked the question, could this be Noah's Ark? There it is.
その記事にですね、ノアの箱舟クエスチョンマークがされていて、その写真が掲載されたわけです。
Oh, there we go. An expedition went to the site.
この記事を受けてですね、調査団がその場所に派遣されました。
And they didn't find what they were expecting to find.
ところがこの調査団たちの人たちが期待していたものは
And
見つからなかったんです。
they spent about 1.5 days there
だいたい1日半ぐらいかけて調査をしました。
and decided maybe it was only a natural formation.
それ1日半の調査の後で彼らはですね、
Or they were,
これは多分自然にできたものだろうという結論を出しました。
or they were scientists on the team said, no, we need to investigate it more closely.
中には専門の科学者たちがいて、もっともっと徹底的に調べるべきではないかと、反論した人たちもいたんですけれども、
But nothing happened for many years.
結局調査を打ち切られて約8年間何も調査をですねなされずにこの場所は放っておかれたんです。
Until in 1978, an earthquake shook the area.
1978年になってトルコのこの地方でですね大地震が起こって、
And the soil all around the shape dropped many meters.
周りの地面がですねかなりの度合いで陥没してしまったんです。
You can see before the earthquake,
これ
the
が洪水
level,
前の状態ですけれども、ごめんなさい、地震前の状態ですね。
and then after the earthquake, you can see the sides were exposed.
1978年の地震後、このような状態になりました。周りの地面がですねかなり陥没してしまったんです。
And that revealed down the sides these vertical colorations.
その結果、このような、模様のあるですね側面部が露出したんです。
And that's interesting.
興味深いです。
This man here and plus others spent nearly 10 years researching it.
そしてこの人物と他にもですね10人ぐらいの調査に加わった人たちが協力して10年ほど、この場所をですね、調べたんです。
Okay. Now we've been there, I've been there for about on and off for 10 years.
Pardon?
Oh, I've been going there since 10 years.
私もですね、だいたい10年ぐらいかけてこの場所何度も行ったり来たりしました。
And in the last 2 years, we've taken more aerial photos of this site.
過去2年にわたってこのようなラジコンヘリを使ってですね上からいろんな写真を撮影しました。
Using a radio-controlled helicopter with a camera underneath.
ラジコンヘリの真下にですねこうやってカメラをつけたんです。
And these are some of the pictures we've taken.
そしてこのようにして航空写真を撮ったこれがその写真ですけれども、
You can see this. Oh, sorry. Okay. You can see the size of the site. This is us standing up the end here.
ここに実は私たちがいるんですけれどもご覧になれますでしょうか。
And this is from higher up.
さらに上の方から撮った写真です。
And that's the visitors center built by the government.
ここにトルコ政府が建てたビジターセンターがあります。
Here's a few more views. This is last year.
これ去年撮影したものですけれども角度を変えて撮りました。
Again, this is the size of it. This is me here.
ここにいるのが私です。
And this is my friend Andrew flying the
ここ
helicopter.
に私の友人ラジコンヘリを操作している人なんですけれども、
There's another view. More views. This is a view from 1 kilometer high.
これはだいたい1キロぐらいの上空から撮った写真です。
Now, what was interesting is comparing the pictures from 1959 when they first saw it from the air
左側が1959年に最初にこれがですね見つかった時の手がかりとなった航空写真であります。
with how it looks today.
そして2010年、一昨年撮られた写真ですね、これが。
Now you can see here, this area here, this mud flow
この辺り、泥流地帯なんですけれども、それがご覧になれますね。
has totally changed.
この周りの様子がだいぶ変わっているのがご覧になれると思います。
Now there's a large, deep gully, ditch, you know what you call it, hollow area. The mud is
ずいぶん
dropped.
周りの地面がですね、このように下がっているのが これと比べてですね、お分かりになると思います。
This is many, many meters below where it used to be here.
1959年よりももう何メートルもこの辺りがですね、実は陥没しているんです。
But what's interesting, this site here hasn't changed at all.
にもかかわらず、この物体自体はですね、全く変わっていないんです。
Something is holding it together.
何かがこの形をですね、このまんまとどめているんですけれども、
Could this be Noah's Ark?
もしかしたらこれが実際のノアの箱舟なのでしょうか。
Now, the Bible says the ark was 300 cubits long.
聖書に箱舟の長さは300キュビトであったと書かれています。
Now, the question is which cubit, because there's many different cubits mentioned in the Bible.
実は聖書だけでもですね、いろんな単位のキュビトがありまして、問われるのはどのキュビトが使われたかということであります。
But there's a clue as to which cubit we should use.
どのキュビトを使うべきかという大きな手がかりがあります。
The Bible talks about a man called Ham who moved down to the land of Egypt.
聖書にハムという人物が出てくるんですけれども、その人はですね、後にエジプトの地に移り住んだということが聖書に記されているんですね。
So Egypt was originally known as the land of Ham.
古代エジプトはですね、かつてハムの地と呼ばれていたんです。
Now Ham was one of Noah's three sons.
ハムという人はお分かりだと思うんですけれども、ノアの3人の息子の一人でした。
He helped build Noah's Ark.
実際に彼もですね、箱舟の建造に携わったんです。
Now Ham had a son called Mizraim.
そのハムという人の息子にですね、息子の一人にミツライムという人がいました。
And if you go to Egypt today, you see Mizraim everywhere.
そのミツライムという人はですね、エジプトに行くと至るところで見受けられるんです。どういうことかと言いますと、
Here's the Bank of
これ
Mizraim.
はミズラ銀行という看板ですね。
Here's Mizra Travel.
ここにミズラトラベル、ミズラ旅行者と書かれています。
Here's Mizra Petrol.
ミズラ石油、
Here's Mizra Life
ミ
Insurance.
ズラ生命保険、
All over the place, you'll see Mizra. And Mizra is Noah's grandson.
エジプトの至るところにこの名称 MISR ミズラという言葉がですね、名前が使われているんです。もともとミズライムという人はノアの孫にあたる人だったんですね。
Now, the Egyptian cubit was based on or originated from the cubit that Ham brought to that land.
そしてこのエジプトでもともと出来上がったエジプトキュビトという単位はですね、実はハムが持ち込んだ、物差しに基づいてそれが基準となったということが分かっています。
And we know exactly how big it is because there are examples in the British Museum.
そしてそのエジプトキュビトを指し示したエジプトキュビト単位で使った物差しがですね、今英国の博物館に展示されていて、そのエジプトキュビトがどれほどの長さかということが正確に今分かっております。
Now, this site in Turkey is 157.1 meters long from end to end.
このトルコで見つかったこの船のような形をしたもの、長さを測ってみると 157.1 メートルあることが分かりました。
That happens to be very precisely, very accurately 300 Egyptian cubits.
そしてその 157.1 メートルはですね、ぴったり300エジプトキュビトに相当するんです。
Now, if this site was, say, 400 cubits or 250 cubits, we could say, let's forget about it.
もしこの場所の長さがですね、400キュビトだったり、200キュビト、250キュビトだったりしたら、これはノアの箱舟ではないと結論付けることができるわけです。
But the fact that it's exactly the length the Bible tells us the ark was means we should investigate it more closely.
しかし実際に長さがですね、聖書で述べている箱舟の長さとぴったり同じ長さのものが見つかったとするならば、これは調査に値するものだということができるわけです。
So why is it buried in this mud flow?
どのようにして、どうしてですね、これが泥流の中に埋もれてしまったんでしょ
う。It looks like originally it landed a bit higher.
もともとはこの物体はですね、もっと高い場所にあったことが考えられます。
And then a large slip or mud flow pulled it down.
それがですね、泥流に乗ってどんどん下ってきたと考えられます。
And then buried it.
そして後にですね、埋没、その中に泥流に埋もれてしまったことが考えられます。
Sorry. Here's an aerial picture showing the area.
この場所の上から撮った写真ですけれども、
You can see the site here.
ここにその物体がありまして、
And we guess it probably landed up here somewhere.
おそらくこの辺りにもともとあったのではないかと考えられます。
And you can see how the hill has been eroded or slipped. It's quite
この
rough.
丘がですね、浸食して泥流になってその流れの模様がご覧になれると思います。
Now, when people have taken metal detectors and looked at this site,
そして金属探知機を使ってこの場所を調べてみますと、
there's a pattern of metal inside in regular lines.
あちらこちらに規則的にですね、金属が埋まっていることが分かったんです。
So last year we took a magnetometer to the site.
そこで私たち去年ですね、マグネトメーターというもの、機械なんですけど、これはおそらく磁場を、磁石の磁ですね、磁場を調べる機械だと思われます。
A magnetometer measures the direction and strength of the Earth's magnetic field.
このマグネトメーターというのは、この場所のですね、磁場を測るものであります。
And that is affected by metal deposits in the ground.
そしてこの磁場というのは、もし近くにですね、金属、鉄があったとしたら、それによってですね、大いに左右されてしまいます。
These are the locations we took readings all around the site.
この辺りを調べてみましたら、
And when we plotted the strength of the magnetic field, this is what it revealed.
磁場を測るとこのような数値が出てきたわけです。
Which shows there's an unusual concentration of metal inside the site.
その結果、この物体の端の部分にですね、金属が集中して埋もれているということが分かったんです。
Now in the past, the site has been radar scanned.
過去においてはレーダースキャン、地中測定装置でですね、調べられたこともありました。
And one piece has been retrieved from near the surface of petrified wood.
ある箇所から化石になった木もですね、見つかりました。
The site hasn't been excavated, but this was dug up by command of the Turkish governor.
これだけは幸いですね、トルコ政府の許可を得て、採掘することができたんですけれども、実際にこの場所全体がですね、まだ発掘調査がなされたことはありません。
And when they cut the corner off this piece of petrified wood,
その化石化した木をですね、切って調べてみますと、
it turned out to be 3 layers of wood. You can see the joins here, glued together.
3つの層になっていることが分かりました。そしてそれぞれの、3辺の木がですね、板が互いに貼り合わされているということが分かったんです。
Also, Ron Wyatt, who researched this the most, drilled a number of holes inside this site.
ロン・ワイアットさんという人が この側面部にですねいくつか許可を得て穴を開けてみました。
And he took samples from deep inside the site.
そして穴を深く掘ってですねその奥から、土に混じったいろんなサンプルを取り出しまして、
And in the samples that he withdrew, he found animal hairs.
その中に動物の毛が見つかったんです。
Now, when they showed this to an expert, the expert said this is from the cat family.
専門家に持って行って調べてもらうと、これがですね猫科の動物、獣の、毛であるということが分かりました。
And probably a spotted cat because it has color banding on it
こ
like
のように
this.
模様がありましたので、これはおそらく斑点の模様のあるですね猫科の獣ではないかと専門家が言ったわけです。
Like maybe a cheetah or a leopard, something
斑
like that.
点があるというとチーターとかヒョウとかですね、そういった類の猫科の動物であります。
Now, the Turkish government recognizes this as the site of Noah's Ark.
そしてさまざまな調査の結果ですね、トルコ政府がこの場所こそ、ノアの箱舟の遺跡であると承認したんです。
You can see the visitors center they've built here.
トルコ政府が建てたビジターセンターが近くにあります。
And the sign here says Noah's Ark National Park Visitors Center.
そしてここにですね看板があって、ノアの箱舟国立公園ビジターセンターとあります。
We visited the mayor of the local town.
その地元のですね町の、町長さん
And he gave
を
us,
訪ねますと、
okay, and he gave us copies of the book he had just produced.
その場所で作られたですね本を私たちいただきました。
And inside his book about the natural treasures around his area,
ドグバヤジットの国宝宝と書かれていますけれども、自然の宝、このような本の表紙ですね。これが
there is a mention of Noah's Ark, and here it
この
is
中
right
にノア
here.
の箱舟と書かれている記事があって、この写真がありますね。
So the Turkish government has no, or the Turkish government believes this is Noah's Ark.
これはもうトルコが政府としてノアの箱舟だと認めている場所であります。
Now we have a video which is about half an hour, which looks at the site and may answer many of your questions.
今からですね30分弱のビデオをお見せしたいと思うんですけれども、皆さんがですね持っておられるはずの疑問にですねいくつか答えてくれるはずです。
You'll see Jerry Bowen on the video.
そのビデオにジェリー・ボーエンというこの人が登場するんですけれども、
He's the gentleman that I'm working with, and we plan an excavation of this site later this year.
今年の秋頃にですね彼と一緒に私たちはこの場所をですね発掘調査する計画を今立てております。
We are aiming for this September to dig a small hole into the site.
できれば9月頃に現地に行ってですね小さな穴を開けて発掘調査をしようと考えています。
Now, before we show the video, I'd just like to share with you a little puzzle.
ビデオをお見せする前に少しだけですね皆さんに謎々を出したいと思います。
Now, here's the puzzle.
これがその謎々ですけれども、
The Bible tells us the ark came to rest on the 17th day of the 7th month, but the tops of the mountains didn't appear until the first day of the 10th month.
聖書の創世記によると箱舟は7月17日にアララテの山にとどまったと書いてあるんですけれども、10月になって初めて山々の頂が現れたと書いてあるんですね。
So how could the ark come to rest before the mountains had even come out of the water?
山々の頂が水の上に現れる前にどうして箱舟がとどまったということがあり得るのでしょうか。
There is a very good answer to this question.
答えはちゃんとあるんです。
And see if you can find the answer as we play the video.
ビデオを見ながらですねその答えを探してみてください。
Noah's Ark. Before the great flood, the world had become filled with wicked men, so much so that the Lord decided to destroy the face of the earth. And God said to Noah, "The end of all flesh has come before me, for the earth is filled with violence through them, and behold, I will destroy them with the earth." The Lord chose Noah, a man of God, to build an ark in which the righteous would be saved along with some of the animals. Noah preached of conversion and repentance for 120 years, but only 8 people gave their hearts to the Lord and entered the ark. The rain came, and the people sought the safety of higher ground or the ark itself. But the angel of the Lord had closed the door of the ark, and it could not be opened. Probation had closed. It was too late. Death and destruction covered the earth. The thoughts of man were evil continually. God extended an invitation, but it was not accepted. This was a judgment of man. All the fountains of the great deep were broken up, and the windows of heaven were opened, and the rain was on the earth 40 days and 40 nights. So he destroyed all living things which were on the face of the ground. God had saved his people through the flood, but they would spend almost 1 year in the ark, waiting for the floodwaters to recede and new life to begin. Noah and his family were anxious to leave the ark. Finally, Noah knew it was safe to leave. He offered a sacrifice to the Lord, and the Lord placed a bow of promise in the sky that he would never again destroy the earth with a flood. The Bible tells us where the ark of Noah came to rest. The ark rested upon the mountains of Ararat. But what is Ararat? The name Ararat, as it appears in the Bible, is the Hebrew equivalent of Urartu, ancient country of Southwest Asia mentioned in Assyrian sources from the early 13th century BC. This area included parts of eastern Turkey, Armenia, and Iran. Moses was not speaking of a specific mountain when writing Genesis. He was speaking of a country, Urartu. So the Bible was saying the ark came to rest in the mountains of the country of Urartu. In eastern Turkey, across the valley from Mount Ararat, is the site we will be visiting. This area was first photographed in an aerial survey conducted in 1959 by Francis Gary Powers. Later, Turkish Lieutenant Duripanar spotted the boat-shaped object in these photographs, so in 1960, a group from the United States journeyed to the site, but they prematurely concluded it was just a natural formation. That same year, Life magazine featured photos of the site. Is there a historical record from ancient civilizations of Noah's Ark existing? Berosus the Chaldean wrote, "It is said there is still some part of the ship in Armenia, at the mountain of the Chaldeans, and some people carry off pieces of the bitumen, which they take away and use chiefly as amulets for the averting of mischiefs." Today, we can look at a map of Turkey and see this site listed as Nuhun Gemisi, or Noah's Big Boat. Making the trip to the site, we landed next to the very large Lake Von, which once hosted the ancient capital of Urartu named Tushpa, located along its shore. Heading out through the countryside, we see an extinct volcano. Crossing a mountain, we soon see our first glimpse of the famous Mount Ararat in the distance. In the shadows of Ararat is the city of Dobayazit that we pass through, heading toward the Noah's Ark site. Mount Ararat is a beautiful mountain, complete with a rich history of mountain climbers searching for the Ark, but without success. Across the valley, we stop and see the government-erected road sign, Nuhun Gemisi, 5 kilometers up the mountain. On Ron Wyatt's first trip to the region in 1977, he didn't know where to begin searching, and he only had 3 days in the area. So he and his teenage sons prayed that their taxi would stall in areas where they needed to search. That day, God stalled their taxi in 3 different locations, and here is our first taxi stop. High on the mountain is the resting place of Noah's ship. The name of this mountain is translated as Doomsday Mountain, named so for the deadly event of the flood. As we drive up the mountain, we can see Lesser Ararat and Greater Ararat across the valley. Both are post-flood volcanic mountains that were not even here during the flood, and they would be the last place one should search for the Ark. We finally made it to the Ark. Looking at it from the stern or rear, one can see the boat shape outline of the Ark. It has a rounded stern and a pointed bow or front. The symmetrical shape indicates that it is a man-made structure. Ron Wyatt made 24 trips out here to conduct tests and do research at this boat-shaped formation. Photos taken at different times of the year have brought out different features of the boat. There was so much convincing evidence uncovered at the site that the Turkish government declared this area to be Noah's Ark National Park, and yet today, the world is unaware of this amazing discovery. Using Google Earth, we can zoom in on the site with satellite imagery to see the Ark, and also the visitor center that was constructed by the Turkish government. It was on June 21, 1987, that a ceremony was held on the mountain to commemorate the site as Noah's Ark National Park. Dignitaries from around the country assembled to break bread and celebrate this wonderful find. The governor, military officers, and other key officials were participating in a celebration of discovery. Ron Wyatt was a special guest because of the extensive work that he had accomplished at the site. The visitor center would welcome guests from around the world to gaze upon the Ark. As concrete was placed in the foundation by the governor and by Ron Wyatt, excitement was in the air. This was a monument to the mortal remains of Noah's Ark. Noah's Ark was found. The next day, an article appeared in Turkey's largest newspaper announcing Noah's Big Boat, open for tourism. Now, we make our way inside the visitor center to view the informative evidence on display. Various diagrams and photos are assembled to point out the important features of the Ark. Specimens from the Ark are also on display, including petrified wood and sea fossils from the area, which indicate this mountain is water-laid rock. A guest book shows us that people are visiting the site from all over the world. Many different countries are represented here. Hassan Ozer has worked in the visitor center since it opened. He has lived his entire life in a village here on the mountain, just above the Ark, and has a great deal of history associated with the Ark. His photo appeared in a Knoxville, Tennessee newspaper, so our team brought him a laminated copy for his own. Hassan now tells us some interesting history about the Ark formation.
Tabii zaten biz gördük, biz de Rolvayt'a söyledik. Bunun gemisi var ya, 1948 senesinde gece bir kayma deprem oldu. Sabahleyin baktık ki her taraf gitmiş. Bunun gemisi bir ada güçlüğüne kalmıştır. Her akşam üzerinde bir elektrik lambası gibi bir ışık yanardı.
In 48, there was an earthquake, and it was in the night time, and we just wake up in the morning and we see the earth was moved, and we saw the shape like an ark.
De ki 1960 yıllarında Türk Hava Kuvvetleri'ne bağlı bir pilot tarafından bunun fotoğrafı çekiyor. Gidiyor Ankara'ya.
69'da, ha?
1960 yıllarında.
60 yıllarında.
60 yıllarında söyle.
Also, after that time, there was a light we could see in the night time in the up on the village when we look down to the ark side, and people was believing that it's holy things, and when they come on to the next to the ark, this light is going off. You know, you cannot find.
Kendi şahsi olarak. Benim kendi şahsi olarak ben de hem inanıyorum hem de karar veriyorum. Çünkü neden? Her taraf gitti, Nuh'un gemisi o böyle ada gibi içinde kaldı. Her akşam üzerinde bir ışık yanardı. Sarı, yeşil, kırmızı. Kimisi diyor burası bir ziyarettir, kimisi bir türbe, kimisi bir hazinedir. Ama araştırma yapıldıktan sonra izin arada kayboldu, gitti. Ben de inanıyorum. Söyle bir daha var. Söyle, onu söyle.
He say that if in my personal thinking is well, I see after this earthquake there is a shape like an arc, and also there was a light which is colored light, green, yellow, and reddish lights we saw there, and lots of people were in the village. They were saying that's the holy place. Somebody says there is some gold, we should go dig it up and stuff like this. They say especially when you come next to it, it's going off. The light you cannot see anymore. But he said after the government confirmed that that's the Noah's Ark, there is no light anymore, and you know, that's make me think it is Noah's Ark.
Do you believe Noah's Ark actually existed? Could the legend that sounds like a fairy tale really become proven fact? Well, the search has been going on since biblical times. And in a moment, you're going to meet some people who are positive they have found the Ark. Now, we know such claims have been made before, but a few months ago, these people came to 2020 with some new and intriguing scientific findings. We followed them to the mountains of eastern Turkey. And what you'll see is a bizarre adventure with a host of unlikely characters. Tom Gerald's story takes many twists and turns.
That's the seductive beauty that brings them here, snow-capped Mount Ararat. The explorers looked for the Ark there since that's the highest point around here. And as the floodwaters receded, presumably that's where it would have landed. But the Bible describes the mountains of Ararat, mountains plural. Is it possible that the Ark came to rest on one of the smaller sister mountains to Ararat? The boat-shaped site was first found and photographed by a Turkish army captain back in 1959. It was quickly explored and dismissed as a freak of nature. But Wyatt, an amateur archaeologist, rekindled interest in it a few years ago. He brought in Dave Fassel, a marine salvage expert, to assess it. The Doomsday Mountain team brought in some high technology to explore the oldest legend of man. They began scanning their site with a molecular frequency generator. It's a device used by surgeons to pinpoint cancer tumors, and it's been used by Fassel to locate underwater treasure. This time, the molecular frequency generator began to pick up a unique pattern of iron lines beneath the earth.
Okay, bring that one up.
They began placing ribbons along those lines. The finished shape, outlined by the ribbons, was that of a huge ship, the approximate length and width of Noah's Ark, as described in the Bible. The fascinating field of ribbons soon attracted higher academic interest.
That looks like iron. Okay.
Dr. John Baumgartner, a physicist with Los Alamos Laboratories, sent samples back to the lab for analysis and confirmed that the metal they were tracing with the ribbons was indeed iron. With the width and the length known, the only remaining question was depth. By locating the depth of the hull, they could determine if the boat-shaped object had the cargo capacity described in the biblical ark. To resolve this final issue, Wyatt and Fassel brought geologist Tom Finner to Turkey with his company's heavy-duty subsurface radar equipment. Gear like this located the black box cockpit recorder on the floor of the frozen Potomac River after the Air Florida crash.
Suppose this rock were a foot or 2 feet underground. Would it give you a reading as to where that was? Could you locate it?
Yes, we could.
Is it possible that there will be a moment at which you'll say, this is a man-made object?
The symmetry of the feature suggests it's about. I hope to prove that the underground structure is in fact that of a boat.
It was here, several miles short of the boat-shaped site, that a waiting game began for Finner and the others. The party needed a final go-ahead from the Turkish government to complete their probe of Doomsday Mountain.
Anyway, we're going to hang in like smell on a skunk. There's nothing left to get this done.
Hanging like the smell on a skunk. The Turkish government stopped the exploration. What now?
Since we were there, Barbara, things have cooled down, and they've sent their own team of scientists in to take a look at this site. It's a very fascinating location.
Ground-penetrating radar was used on the formation to see what is inside. The reflections created a picture of timbers underground. This diagram shows us some of the main structural elements of the Ark, including parallel and repeated patterns, indicating a man-made site.
Indeed, there is something beneath that rock besides rock. A radar device developed by Geophysical Survey Systems in Hudson was used on the mountain. The device, called SIR, is used by energy exploration companies to analyze what's below the Earth's surface. According to SIR, something man-made is under Mount Eridog.
This data does not represent natural geology. It's a man-made structure. These reflections are occurring very periodic, too periodic to be random natural type interface.
Compared to an aircraft carrier 1,000 feet long, we can see the Ark is quite large. The Ark was a high-tech vessel that was designed to survive a catastrophic flood that would destroy the surface of the Earth. Complete with a keel, keelsawns, and anchor stones, it was truly a work of art designed to save the human race from annihilation. The Bible tells us the Ark was 300 cubits in length. The Ark formation has been measured to be 515 feet long, which is exactly 300 Egyptian cubits. Moses, when writing the Genesis account, would have been accustomed to using the longer Egyptian cubit of 20.6 inches. The Bible mentions an earlier cubit, cubits according to the former measure. This references the Egyptian cubit, which was divided into 28 digits, making up the cubit rod. Many centuries later, the 18-inch Hebrew cubit was developed and implemented. At the Tel Megiddo in Israel, Solomon's gates can be measured to exactly 6 Egyptian cubits, showing further evidence of its early usage. One can easily see the rib timbers near the stern on the starboard side of the Ark. This was part of the superstructure of the Ark, much like ships are constructed today. Horizontal boards would have been attached to these vertical ribs. Here we can see vertical fissures between the ribs. These ribs run perpendicular to the mud flow around the structure, indicating once again man-made construction. Local village boys greet us as we take a look at the starboard side of the Ark, which curves uphill toward the front of the Ark. This side is predominantly buried in the soil. The outside of the bow, or front, is just before us, and then we scan down the starboard side to see the top of the rib timbers. In the distance, we can see Mount Ararat and Lesser Ararat. We now pan over to the port side of the Ark near the stern. This side is less preserved, but we can see one large rib timber standing at attention. It has been beautifully preserved and has retained the curvature of the hull. From here we look toward the front of the Ark, and we can see a large hole which was blown open in 1960, when the first group came here from the United States to inspect the site. We are now standing on the middle deck of the Ark, and now pan over to the interior of the port side, where we can see 4 horizontal protrusions in a row. They are arranged in a regular pattern, indicating man-made construction. These would have been horizontal deck support timbers, extending toward the middle of the deck. At the stern, we can see the symmetrical shape of the boat, including the center mound, where the decks have collapsed one on top of another. Continuing to inspect the stern, we can see 5 objects in a row along the inside port area of the deck. These have been measured at regular intervals and appear to be vertical posts that would have supported the deck. The ark originally came to rest higher on the mountain, but was pulled down to its current location amidst a lava or mud flow, which impaled it on this rock outcropping. Ron Wyatt was operating his ground-penetrating equipment before Turkish authorities when he spotted an object just below the surface. What they found was this beautiful deck timber. It was tested at Galbraith Labs for organic carbon. The level of organic carbon was extremely high, thus proving this object was once living matter, consistent with wood. Mr. Wyatt was able to display the deck timber on CNN when he was interviewed on their network. The timber is in 3 layers, much like plywood, with glue oozing out at the end. This makes it stronger than one solid piece of wood. The outer area is covered in black pitch. Some nails can also be seen on its surface. This layering of wood may have been the gopher wood mentioned in Genesis. Just above the ark site is the Uzungili village. Its former name in the 19th century was Nasr. This pronunciation is similar to Nicer, a village that the Babylonian Berosus described as being near the ark site. Josephus in the 1st century said, "Its remains are shown there by the inhabitants to this day." This would tell us the ark would be in an accessible location. These local villagers would have had a tourist trade, accommodating visitors to the ark. The visitors to the ark would have stayed overnight here and would have bought souvenirs in the village. Evidence of this was discovered in 2000, when an archaeologist found this potsherd 20 yards from the ark. On the concave side, it has a carving of a man using a hammer to drive a nail, much like Noah building the ark. On the convex side, an ancient ink drawing shows a man releasing birds, matching the biblical narrative of Noah releasing a raven and a dove. This is just another piece of amazing evidence found here at the ark site. Using radar equipment, Ron Wyatt discovered an open cavity on the starboard side of the ark. Utilizing a core drilling technique, he was able to gain access to the interior of the ark. Stunning evidence was pulled from the belly of the ship. Using an improvised long rake device, petrified animal dung was extracted from the hull. Next, cat hair was also pulled from the cavity. Then, a petrified antler was extracted. These are all items that one would expect to find in the bottom of the ark. The Bible tells us the antediluvians were skilled in metalworking. Tubal-Cain, an instructor of every craftsman in bronze and iron. This large metal rivet, or metal washer around a metal rod, was found by Ron Wyatt when he had taken a tour group to the site in 1991. The center rod had been struck while it was hot, causing it to flare out, holding the washer in place. Test results showed that it contained 8% aluminum metal. Aluminum metal is man-made, thus proving the site to be man-made. Skeptics have said Mr. Wyatt was lying about the testing, but was he really? When the Ark Discovery International team was at the ark site, they used a metal detector to locate metal fittings on the ark. This is a crescent-shaped piece of metal that had been a circular washer in its better days and was found near the bow on the port side. A portion of it tested at Galbraith Labs in Tennessee, and the results were stunning. It was 8% aluminum metal, just as Ron Wyatt's test had revealed. The test additionally showed a small amount of titanium metal that is also man-made. The Ark Discovery team continued its analysis at the site and located another fitting on the starboard side. A portion of it was sent to Galbraith Labs for testing, and again, there were incredible results. It contained 8% aluminum metal, 1.3% titanium metal, plus 3.8% magnesium metal, all indicative of the ark formation being a man-made structure. The Encyclopedia Britannica tells us, because of its chemical activity, aluminum never occurs in the metallic form in nature. These unique metal components are special markers that were left behind, which prove the site is without a doubt a man-made structure utilizing high-tech construction techniques consistent with what we should find in Noah's Ark. Modern man didn't discover how to make aluminum metal until around 1900, but the antediluvians had this knowledge in their day. Other metal fittings were found on the port side of the deck. Our metal detector picked up metal readings where a rectangular plate was positioned on a flat plane. This plate originally had 6 rivets. One is still visible on the left side. Other metal fittings can be seen around the ark in various locations. The metal fittings have different colors from the surrounding material, making it easier to locate them at the site. On the outer portion of the ark, at a higher level, we were able to see this object that appears to be a metal cap on top of a vertical post. It has an X impression embossed in the center of it. The left side of the cap is missing, but the top and this immediate side are still affixed to the post. The X impression is indicative of a man-made structure with the 90-degree angles. Our second taxi stop is the village of Kazan, where large anchor stones can be found that once hung from the rear of the ark. Just down the valley from Noah's Ark, we come to the village of Kazan, where portions of the ark's directional system were released, thus allowing the ark to float more freely. This village was known as the Place of the Eight, named so for the 8 survivors of the flood. This is the first area that Noah and his family lived after the flood. The large anchor stones were hung from the rear of the ark to keep the rear facing oncoming waves. It created a type of resistance in the water, allowing the rounded rear of the ark to fend off powerful waves that would critically damage the ark if struck broadside. This is our first anchor stone. Measuring 11 feet in height, with 4 feet embedded in the ground, it is actually the largest and most beautiful anchor stone found to date. A tapered hole was drilled into the top of each anchor stone, a 5-inch opening on one side and a 7-inch opening on the other, allowing a rope to be pulled through and a knot tied. It was designed to be lifted while in the water when it would weigh less, thereby preventing the top from breaking off. The most striking feature is the crosses that have been carved on the anchor stone. Early Christians came through this area and recognized these objects as biblical items from the ark. They carved crosses on these anchor stones, representing Noah and his family. The largest cross here represents Noah and is of the Crusader style. The diamond shape with a cross above was Nimrod's sign when he was alive. The diamond represents the ark that he took credit for. Then the vertical line is the pathway to heaven, with the crossbar representing heaven. The Egyptians had an adaptation of this symbol called the Ankh. Smaller anchor stones or drogue stones can be found near the Mediterranean. This is one of the largest you will ever see outside the Noah's Ark area. The next anchor stone is partially buried in the ground with 5 crosses. The largest cross represents Noah. The next smallest, Mrs. Noah. Then the 3 smallest are the sons of Noah. At the bottom is a possible image of the Tower of Babel, which was built around 200 years after the flood by Nimrod and his rebellious followers. This particular stone has 7 crosses, with the 8th having been removed at some point in time. This stone has a large cross representing Noah. The next smaller cross on the bottom left is Mrs. Noah. The next 3 smaller crosses represent the 3 sons. Then the 3 smallest represent the wives of the sons. This stone does not have any carvings on it, but it does have a hole drilled through the top. Other stones have been found buried, but they have no inscriptions. This stone had a hole drilled in the left side. Then on the right, we can see ancient inscriptions. Vandals have broken this stone, but you can see where the hole once was in the top. Crosses have also been carved on this stone. Five crosses are on this anchor stone, and as we look at the top, we can see where the hole has been broken off. Outside the village of Kazan is a large object that has the appearance of petrified tree bark and with unusual characteristics.
far as we know, there's nothing else like this anywhere. Nobody's ever.
My goodness.
It's got crosses that are very faintly carved on it. You got a big one here. You got a small one right there. One here. One here. They're harder to see over here.
And this is petrified wood?
Well,
it looks like
Ron said he thought it was petrified
bark.
Tree bark.
Right.
If you look at you ever see, it looks like a little bit like pine bark.
It sounds like metal.
Yeah, why would the anchor stone be wood?
This isn't an anchor stone.
Oh, I see.
This was just like something that was on the ark, right? I believe.
Well, Ron theorized that this might have been or part of the cover. You remember at one point it says, and Noah came out of the ark and he took the cover off, or he threw the cover off. And of course that's just speculation. We don't have a way of knowing, but this is a rather unique thing. It has the appearance and the texture of some kind of a bark, but it is stone.
That is the cross.
Right?
That is the cross.
There you go.
That is incredible.
It has a very hollow sound.
Very hollow. It sounds like metal.
But it's just a.
Well, it's just that's its harmonic ring.
Right. Yeah. Harmonic resonance. You're right.
Yeah.
But not many stones that do that.
That's true.
With the sun coming out.
Well, I think there's 8 crosses on it. We've been able to find 7. I think there's an 8th one up there.
Our next taxi stop is the home of Noah, near the village of Kazan. This photo was taken in 1977 by Ron Wyatt, showing the walls of Noah's home. Since then, all the walls have been torn down by local treasure seekers. In the front yard stood this large tombstone. On the tombstone was a drawing of 8 people and a boat on a wave. The second largest person was looking downward with their eyes closed. This indicates that this was Mrs. Noah's tombstone. After Mr. Wyatt showed this to someone, that person later hired others to exhume Mrs. Noah's 18-foot sarcophagus. Its depression in the ground is still visible today. Her jewelry was later sold on the black market for millions of dollars. Extending out from Noah's house are these ancient stone fences for containing animals. In Genesis, we are told that Noah practiced husbandry. In this case, we can see signs of animal husbandry. Some fences are more prominent than others, but they are all in straight lines. Uphill, behind Noah's home, is this large altar that he would have used to sacrifice animals to the Lord. It is approximately 10 feet in diameter and has a cube-like shape. In conclusion, we can say that the Darupanar, Noah's Ark formation, is full of evidence which confirms its authenticity, especially when we objectively consider all the information. Many books have been written about the discovery of the Ark. It has been featured in many newspapers and television programs, but most of the world is not aware of this beautiful discovery, which refutes evolution and proves the Bible to be truth. In God's timing, He will reveal this to all mankind.
Okay. Did you work out the little mystery we showed you before?
ビデオの前に私が出したなぞなぞ、答え分かりましたでしょうか？
Remember, the question was, how could the ark come to rest before the mountains had even come out of the water?
山が水の上に現れる前に箱舟が漂着したということが起こりうるかということですけれども、
And I think the answer is because suspended beneath the ark on long ropes were these things here.
このような怒りがですね、箱舟の下に吊り下げられたということであるならば、この謎がですね、解けるわけです。
Now, I'll reiterate again, we have a project later this year to do an excavation in one small area of the site.
私たちは政府の許可をもらってですね、この 箱舟の小さい箇所にですね、穴を開けて発掘調査をする計画をしております。
I'm 99% certain this is Noah's Ark.
私はこれがですね、ノアの箱舟であると 99% 確信しています。
But an excavation will reveal one way or the other.
発掘調査をすればですね、残りの 1% の確信が得られるか、それとも確信が崩れるか、どちらかになると思います。
So may I ask for your prayers for this project that will be successful.
皆さんにですね、できればこのプロジェクトがですね、成功するようにお祈りに覚えていただけたら幸いであります。
Thank you very much.
ありがとうございました。